why do we want to be more present when we show up?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a simple question.
I know.
But I'm curious, like, what's your take?
It always just comes back to this, like, because I want to enjoy my life as I'm living it.
You know, we might not have 30, but we all have 1 minute.
Yeah.
And so when you're moving from one thing to the next, being as focused and present in that activity as possible,
Right.
and then taking a second to just breathe and to find that centered space, and then to start in on the next thing, you know, whatever that thing is.
And I would notice, wow, am I flustered? Wow, do I need to just like take a minute to breathe or just to prepare for the next thing and collect myself? I think where the real kind of power behind it comes in is that mindset shift.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the Finding Simple Abundance podcast. My name is Adam.
And I'm Maggie.
This is Maggie, my lovely, lovely wife. And we are in a brief period where our daughter, who is now 5 weeks old, is asleep. So we are recording this as fast as we can. So excuse me if we're...
Drop everything. We have to record now. We have a window.
Yes. But we've done what we call the Adam and Maggie show for a long time. In fact, are we calling this the Adam and Maggie show or Finding Simple?
What are we calling this?
Adam, Maggie and I have been recording podcast episodes since about 2019. There was quite a spate where we weren't recording anything. But then Maggie had a really interesting podcast series about yoga.
Yeah.
And essentially we want to come back, and now that we're taking this year of intentional living and just bring it all back together.
We want to bring back the Adam and Maggie show with a new twist.
A new twist. And that is this year of living intentionally, this idea of kind of seeking and finding what we call simple abundance. And now that we have our baby daughter, it just adds a layer of complexity that is kind of fun.
Yeah. And our whole, the whole reason we started podcasting together was not even to really share it with anyone. We were like, wouldn't it be fun to create a podcast together? And then we could listen back to what we said years from now.
Yep.
And it was honestly, even back then, it was a way that we could live intentionally and have intentional conversations together. And
interesting. I forgot we used to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like, it was a whole point is that having these intentional conversations. And I'm a firm believer that when you put a microphone in front of someone, in a sense, it calls them to their best self. Like they become more present and more aware that they're having this conversation, and they are more likely, I am more likely to not be out in my mind or like always just daydreaming or thinking about something else. And it calls me into this present moment.
Right. It calls me to be very present in this conversation with you. And I think that's what we discovered, what we loved so much about doing that. Yeah. And so it only felt right to bring back a podcast in our year of living intentionally.
That's right. That's right. So one of the things that we are going to do is right now, the plan is to pair these episodes essentially with our newsletter that comes out. So if you go to adamandmaggie.com or findingsimpleabundance.com, both of those will take you to our newsletter. You can sign up. And Maggie you just have such an incredible writing voice. And so I love reading our newsletters. And I'm so excited to sit down and basically talk about the concept in the newsletter.
Yeah.
And then that way we can kind of dive a little bit deeper into it and tease it apart in different ways. And so I'm just excited for that.
Yeah.
This week, the topic, the idea is called space around space. And it is a phrase that we use a lot in this family, just as we're moving through different transitions, different things, always reminding ourselves space around space. Or when we realize we're doing it really well, we're like, oh, space around space.
Look at us.
So Maggie, take us through this idea of space around space for those who have either listened to the newsletter or read the newsletter and want to go deeper, or have not had a chance to read the newsletter. What is this concept of space around space?
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept is basically that you're putting a bubble around an event or an activity or the next segment of your day. So it's really creating space to prepare or to shift or to transition. And I mean, and then so that you can come to the next place or the activity or event with more presence. And you feel like, I have arrived. I am here. And I think so many of us that are parents, and I mean, even anyone, everybody knows how the transitions can be hard, and you're late or you're whatever, and you just like flusterly get to a place, and it just makes for life and your day to day. It doesn't make it feel good. And So really, honestly, I learned about this concept, space around space, and this kind of reminder that we use. I learned about it through a friend because I had said, man, I just hate being late all the time. And I really want to overcome that.
Yeah.
And I really want to be on time to places. And it was so frustrating to be that person who was always late. And her advice was to create space around space. And as I just used that as kind of a daily reminder, I really did get to places on time. And it felt better. I felt more present. I felt more ready. And so, yeah, as we've kind of incorporated that into our life and we use it together as a reminder.
So like to maybe put some numbers to it. I mean, just as an example, because I think the idea of space around space goes much more than just scheduling.
Exactly.
But let's say we wanted to, the way we've kind of used it is, okay, we want to go to like this Wichita, which is like 40 minutes or so from our house.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the bigger city. We're in a smaller town here. And so we want to get to the big city. So instead of giving ourselves 40 minutes to get there, that's basically the space. You need the space of 40 minutes. But what if we created space around that space?
Yeah.
And we left 30 minutes early? It sounds crazy, but you have so much more time and energy and like just room for things to happen.
Yeah.
And then you're part of the journey in this whole thing. And so that could be, 10 minutes before you leave and then 10 minutes arriving there with another 10 minutes thrown in just in general. And that's just like a random example, but the idea of not only creating the space to move from point A to point B or to transition from one activity to the next, but to like say, okay, I want to give myself even more space. And what always gets me is that as someone who tries to maximize my days, I find I can fill a lot of time if I'm just going like one thing after the next. But that idea of space around space, it means I have to do less. And it also means my days are better.
And it also means you're more present in your days.
Yeah.
And you enjoy your days more. And then I think what's cool, because we've played now with this concept, not just around scheduling, but kind of bringing it deeper a little bit into a frame of mind and into a mindset. So maybe you really do have a very full day and that's just how life is. And we can't get down on ourselves about that, And so instead of, even if you don't have that physical space, creating that space in your mind. And even if it's just a minute, that you're still space around space, still using that as a reminder of breathing and checking in. And I think that's one thing I said in the newsletter. It became an act of self-love to have space around space. It became points where I would check in with myself and I would notice, wow, am I flustered? Wow, do I need to just like take a minute to breathe or just to prepare for the next thing and collect myself? And so it became more of a mindset shift too, even though there's absolutely physical things we can do differently and implement to make it easier on ourselves. But I think where the real kind of power behind it comes in is that mindset shift.
Yeah. So like the 30 minutes extra is an extreme example, although
it is very helpful.
It is very nice. And with a baby now, a 5-week-old baby, boy, do we need that extra 30 minutes just to show up on time.
Oh my word.
But you're right. It goes beyond that. It's recognizing that we all have 1 minute.
Yeah.
We might not have 30, but we all have 1 minute.
Yeah.
And so when you're moving from one thing to the next, being as focused and present in that activity as possible, and then taking a second to just breathe and to find that centered space, and then to start in on the next thing, whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And I actually have been using it a lot. I'm what they call a podcast junkie.
Oh my word.
I love podcasts. I love learning from people. I love hearing people share their stories and their ideas and their concepts, but it can quickly and easily become just like podcast after podcast after podcast after podcast throughout the day as you're going about other activities. And or going straight from a podcast into, another activity. And I don't necessarily sit down even just for a few seconds and just kind of integrate the things that I'm learning in the podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if other people feel this way, but it's like, yeah, I just sometimes remind myself that it's the moments between the areas of learning that have the most impact, because you can integrate the things you're learning, that information, you can pull it and then dissect it and like just let it
Percolate.
settle. Yeah, percolate and see what kind of comes to the surface, what ideas or concepts really mean something to you. And so whether that's podcasts, whether that's movies and television, oh my gosh, Netflix.
Yeah, I was just going to say the thing on Netflix where they're like, they move you to the next episode right away. And you're just like, okay, yeah, I'm here. And then I didn't even let the other episode really sink in because I'm like, well, I'm on to the next episode. This is great.
Or find that space and realize maybe I don't want to watch another episode.
Right.
We were trying to stop an episode last night and we couldn't get to the computer fast enough. And it started rolling. And then you're almost like, well, it's already playing. And it's like, wait a second. No. Like, we don't need to do this. We don't need to watch another episode.
I know.
Of Gilmore Girls.
Right. Gilmore Girls. What? It's like our fall.
It's like a warm blanket and pumpkin spice. That's, if I were to call that show anything, it'd be a warm blanket, pumpkin spice.
We have this weird thing where we think that fall reminds us of Gilmore Girls for some reason.
Stars Hollow, baby.
Stars Hollow.
Yeah, but so that would be a good example of like just letting things settle. And sure, you want to watch another episode, you want to listen to another podcast
but
episode.
You're making that conscious choice.
You want to watch another YouTube video. I would say YouTube Shorts are very much that same way. It's just so easy to go to the next. And it's like, okay, am I doing this intentionally? Am I creating space between these different activities in order to like just reset and recenter and then move on to the next thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And then we also think about that in our space, like physical space, creating space around space. And I mean, there's that. I think that our spaces can have an effect on our mind and the way we feel. And so when a space is decluttered and it feels like there's, space around the physical things, there's not just like clutter around, then it's almost like your brain can relax and your whole being can just be like, I feel so good in this space because it's decluttered and whatever. And it just, our physical environment affects that.
I get so angsty when our house is just kind of, and I think you actually instilled this in me.
I did, definitely.
Like, you're very much an organized person, and I was not necessarily focused on being, clutter-free.
Yeah.
Although I guess my version of clutter-free is just to not have anything.
So like burn it.
So when I was in my bachelor pad, it consisted essentially of like a mattress and one chair.
And then I come in, I'm like, no, we need some things.
We need some things. So, but then as soon as I start having things, it starts to get wild. So this beautiful scene set up here is very clean. Yeah. But if I were to turn the camera around, that would
to
be
Adam's desk.
To my desk. Although like I said, I feel that sense of anxiety, or just kind of like angst. So when I can create that space, literally space in my environment, where there's just not clutter, where there's just less things, I enjoy it so much more. Yeah. And we would think in this world of like consumerism, like that it's better to like acquire and accumulate.
And like have every single thing you need.
Yeah. I actually enjoy it more when we have less, which is, it's a great insight.
Me too. And the other thing with space around space that I kind of use as a reminder, like even if I consciously breathe or something, like I feel like it just kind of, I don't know, it kind of invites you, like even the phrase kind of invites you to think about breathing and creating space in your body and just like, I don't know, how you're holding yourself and if you're tense or if you're not. I just think it's kind of cool how it invites you to just like breathe and create space in your body and in your the way that you're holding yourself.
Something I didn't really think about until I think right now, the breath is such an important part of it. And I know yoga has been a part of our lives off and on and in different variations of intensity. But one of the things in yoga, I mean, there's definitely like the breath component, but then there's also the like just space as you're holding your asanas, like you're holding your poses. I mean, you're creating space in your body. as you are moving. And literally I feel taller. I feel just less like compact,
restricted
after doing, yoga or, focusing on that.
Yeah. Right. You feel more open.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's what's so cool about this as a reminder in life and how we move through life. I think it's so cool because it does allow you to be not only more present, but more open when you're creating more space, and we're not just immediately filling. I think that's the tendency. We have a tendency to, if there's space, fill it.
Yeah.
I think we have talked about this before, where if our calendar is open or kind of like wide open, or we just fill it.
Yeah.
We're just like, oh, that's a day, fill it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's interesting.
Well, the area, and I'm very much a business-minded person. And so I tend to think in business-minded ways. But one of the concepts that I think Paul Graham talked about was this idea between manager time and maker time. And maker time requires having these big open spaces that looks like an empty calendar, but actually is this, you need that sense of space and time in order to get into the creative process of making the thing. And oftentimes it can feel from the outside like, oh, you're just kind of puttering around.
Yeah.
But you need that space. Whereas a manager, they're most effective when they're filling their days with, meeting after meeting or thing after thing. And if we take that outside of the business context, just how are you moving through your life? Are you moving through your life in a maker way where you're manifesting your life via, taking time and like being intentional about, I'm going to take a few minutes and meditate, and I'm going to take a few minutes and read this book, and I'm going to journal in order to like really show up and be present when you are engaged with the outside world.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go have a coffee with someone, even though it's not quote unquote productive, but it's going to allow me to, be my best self. Or are you living the life of a manager, which is, I'm going to just, what's the GSD mentality? Get shit done mentality.
Yeah.
And I think it takes both of those, because there are times where you do need to just like, I'm just going to bang out this list and I'm going to feel incredible afterwards.
Right.
But then also recognizing that we do need that maker space.
Yeah.
So it seems like your mind was being blown by my incredible insight. Please, Maggie, what was coming to mind?
It was. No, I just love that because, sometimes we're just, I think our world really does kind of push us into this manager role. Yeah. And we just take it on and we're like, that's what I'm doing. But yet we're doing that. And there's this other part of us that doesn't really love it. And we really crave to have that space to be creators and makers. And I think it's a mix of both. And I think that that's why space around space is such a beautiful thing, because it can be applied when you have a very full day, and it can be applied when you don't. But it's the how. It's how you show up. It's how you do the things. It doesn't really depend on what you do. We all do different things, and our days look different all the time. But it's how you move through it.
I always like to take concepts back to like first principles, and it's and the how, I think, is a really important question. Or not the how, the why.
Oh yeah.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Space around space, you've mentioned it multiple times, is about creating ways in which you can be more present when you show up. Why do we want to be more present when we show up?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a simple question.
I know.
But I'm curious, like, what's your take? Why is it important, impactful, preferable to be present when we are just moving through our lives?
Yeah. I think it's so funny because I always I love doing that. I love like asking why until you get to like the very root.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the very root of it is, it always just comes back to this, like, because I want to enjoy my life as I'm living it. Mm-hmm. I want to be in my life. I don't want to watch my life. I don't want to, see it go by. I want to be in it. I want to be this active participant in my life and just enjoy it.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy those moments and not look back and think, man, I wasn't really there.
Yeah.
I was there, but I wasn't really there.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would probably echo that exact same thing. I mean, trying to be a manifester of our lives, being an active participant versus just a passive observer. It's that opportunity to, how can I be real, be here, be now? Yeah. I was reading actually Eckhart Tolle's.
Oh yeah, Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah, The Power of Now.
Yeah,
and it's incredible. Or I was reading it. I was listening to it on Audible.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because he has his accent as he's reading it, and it's just like this, like blasting you with like truth bomb after truth bomb, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And I would just go on these walks and just be like, whoa, like life is life, man.
Yeah,
life is lifey. And and so the more present I am, the more I find that my days are slower.
Yeah.
And more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And not just pleasurable, but enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting how there's that connection between, like, when you are present, you can find that sense of enjoyment, even when things aren't objectively enjoyable.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a reason why that people are always like, gratitude is the way to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you're always like, I know it would help me if I listed 5 things that would be great, that I'm grateful for every day. Like, we all know, like, it's pretty impactful to focus on gratitude, but I think we can't even get to that place of gratitude when we're not present.
Yeah.
We can't even focus enough to do it.
Yeah. So or if you say, why do we want to be grateful? Because I want to be more present.
Right.
And so I would say, Maggie, why do we want to enjoy our lives? Like, that feels like a pretty, simple answer there. It's just like, because it's enjoyable.
Yeah. I know.
So space around space, the concept that we use, and it's fun because it's also just like such a fun little alliteration, space around space.
Yeah.
And so much of our back and forth as a couple, as our family, our children are involved in that as well. Just like always saying, like, oh, space around space, space around space. And so, I guess as we're kind of wrapping up this, and the reason I say we're wrapping this up is that our daughter is waking up from her nap, so she's probably going to start crying here in a second.
I can see the face.
This is the concept of space around space. Maggie goes into like a really, I don't know, I would say poetic kind of reflection in the newsletter. So if you haven't read that, definitely go check that out. FindingSimpleAbundance.com or AdamandMaggie.com. And if you have read it first and you're coming here for a little bit of a deeper dive, I would love to know in the comments, like, how have you been able to incorporate space around space, or plan to incorporate space around space when it comes to being more present in your life and creating that opportunity. Maggie, any kind of closing words for me?
Oh, I would just say this is so fun. I love talking to you. And I love talking about concepts like this. Yeah. I can't wait to do more of it.
Yeah. What about the audience? Our audience. The joke is that, like, honestly, this is my favorite thing, is to sit down and have a conversation with Maggie. And so, honestly, I don't necessarily even care if anyone listens to this or watching. I just enjoy having conversations with you. And so as we were coming to this year of living intentionally, I was like, what if we just got to have amazing conversations every day?
I know.
Wouldn't that be so much fun?
It would just be fun.
And so here we are.
So I just want to say I'm grateful for anyone who's listening to us. Because I just think it's fun to talk about these kinds of things and concepts. And I love hearing what other people have to say and hearing about other people's lives and insights and wisdom too, because it enhances our lives as well.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, thanks, Maggie, for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Yay.
Let's go save our baby before she starts crying.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. We'll see you. Bye.
Bye.